Who's you? It's Mr. White. I'm reading Mr. Popper's Penguins, chapters 6 and 7. Chapter 6, More Troubles. The children were the first to notice a policeman. Look, Papa, said Bill, there's a policeman at the back door. Is he going to arrest you? Cook, said Captain Cook, walking with dignity to the door and trying to poke his beak through the screen. Is this 432 Proudfoot Avenue? It is, answered Mr. Popper. Well, I guess this is the place all right, said the policeman, and pointed to Captain Cook. Is that thing yours? Yes, it is, said Mr. Popper proudly. And what do you do for a living? Asked the policeman sternly. Papa is an artist, said Janie. He's always getting paint and calcimine all over his clothes, said Bill. I'm a house painter, a decorator, said Mr. Popper. Won't you come in? I won't, said the policeman, unless I have to. Ha ha, said Bill. The policeman is afraid of Captain Cook. Gah, said the penguin, opening his red beak wide as if he wanted to laugh at the policeman. Can it talk? Asked the policeman. What is it? A giant parrot? It's a penguin, said Janie. We keep it for a pet. Well, if it's only a bird, said the policeman, lifting his cap to scratch his head in a puzzled sort of way. From the way that fellow with the tool bag yelled at me outside, I thought there was a lion loose in here. Mama says Papa's hair looks like a lion sometimes, said Bill. Keep still, Bill, said Janie. The policeman doesn't care how Papa's hair looks. The policeman now scratched his chin. If it's only a bird, I suppose it will be okay if you keep him in a cage. We keep him in the ice box, said Bill. You can put it in the ice box for all I care, said the policeman. What kind of a bird did you say it was? A penguin, answered Mr. Popper. And by the way, I might want to take him walking with me. Would it be all right if I kept him on a leash? I tell you, said the policeman, honestly, I don't know what the municipal ordinance about penguins is, with or without a leash on the public streets. I'll ask my sergeant. Maybe I ought to get a license for him, suggested Mr. Popper. It's certainly big enough for a license, said the policeman. I'll tell you what to do. You call up the city hall and ask them what the ruling about penguins is. And good luck to you, Popper. He's kind of a cute little fellow at that. Looks almost human. Good day to you, Popper, and good day to you, Mr. Penguin. When Mr. Popper telephoned the city hall to see about a license for Captain Cook, the penguin did his best to disconnect the telephone by biting the green cord. Perhaps he thought it was some new kind of eel. But just then, Mrs. Popper came back from market and opened a can of shrimps so that Mr. Popper was soon left alone at the telephone. Even so, he found it was not so easy to learn whether or not he must get a license for his strange pet. Every time he would explain what he wanted, he would be told to wait a minute, and much later a new voice would ask him what he wanted. This went on for considerable time. At least a new voice seemed to take a little interest in the case. Pleased with this friendly voice, Mr. Popper began again to tell about Captain Cook. Is he an army captain, a police captain, or a navy captain? He is not, said Mr. Popper. He's a penguin. Will you repeat that, please? Said the voice. Mr. Popper repeated it. The voice suggested that perhaps he had better spell it. Penguin, said Mr. Popper. Penguin. Oh, said the voice, you mean that Captain Cook's first name is Benjamin? Not Benjamin, Penguin. It's a bird, said Mr. Popper. Do you mean, said the phone in his ear, that Captain Cook wishes a license to shoot birds? I'm sorry. The bird hunting season does not open until November. And please try to speak a little more distinctly, Mr. Topper. Did you say your name is? My name is Popper, not Topper, shouted Mr. Popper. Yes, Mr. Potter. Now I can hear you quite clearly. Then listen, roared Mr. Popper, now completely outraged. If you folks at the city hall don't even know what penguins are, I guess you haven't any rule saying they have to be licensed. I will do without a license for Captain Cook. Just a minute, Mr. Popwell. Our own Mr. Treadbottom of the Bureau of Navigation of Lakes, Rivers, Ponds, and Streams has just come in. I will let you speak to him personally. Perhaps he knows this Benjamin Cook of yours. In a moment, a new voice was speaking to Mr. Popper. Good morning. This is the Automobile License Bureau. Did you have this same car last year? And if so, what was the license number? Mr. Popper had been switched over to the county building. He decided to hang up. Chapter 7. Captain Cook Builds a Nest. Very reluctantly, Janie and Bill had to leave Captain Cook and go to school. Mrs. Popper was busy in the kitchen, rather belatedly, doing the breakfast dishes, and while she dimly realized that Penguin was going in and out of the refrigerator pretty frequently, she thought nothing of it at first. Meanwhile, Mr. Popper had abandoned his telephoning and was now busy shaving and making himself neat in honor of being the owner of such a splendid bird as Captain Cook. But the Penguin, though thus neglected for the moment, was by no means idle. With the unusual excitement and having to go to market earlier than usual, Mrs. Popper had not yet got around to straightening the house. She was an excellent housekeeper. Still, with 2 children like Janie and Bill, and a husband with such untidy ways, there is no denying the fact that she had to pick up the place rather frequently. Captain Cook was now attending to the picking up. Into the corners of every room he prowled and poked and pecked with a busy thoroughness. Into every closet he stared with his white circled eyes. Under and behind all the furniture, he crowded his plump figure with little subdued cries of curiosity, surprise, and pleasure. And each time he found what he seemed to be looking for, he picked it up in the black end of his red beak and carried it, waddling proudly on his wide pink feet into the kitchen and into the icebox. At last it occurred to Mrs. Popper to wonder what on earth the busy bird was up to. When she looked, she could only scream to Mr. Popper to come quickly and see what Captain Cook had done now. Mr. Popper himself looking rather remarkable, as Mrs. Popper noticed later, joining her and staring with astonishment into the refrigerator. Captain Cook came up too and helped them look. "Ork, ork," he said with triumph. Mrs. Popper laughed, and Mr. Popper gasped as they saw the results of Captain Cook's trips through the house. 2 spools of thread, 1 white chess bishop, and 6 parts of a jigsaw puzzle, a teaspoon and a closed box of safety matches, a radish, 2 pennies, a nickel, and a golf ball, 2 pencil stubs, 1 bent playing card, and a small ashtray, 5 hairpins, an olive, 2 dominoes, and a sock, a nail file, 4 buttons of various sizes, a telephone slug, 7 marbles, and a tiny doll's chair, 5 checker pieces, a bit of a graham cracker, a parcheesi cup, and an eraser, a door key, a button hook, and a crumpled piece of tinfoil, half of a very old lemon, the head of a china doll, Mr. Popper's pipe, and a ginger ale cap, an ink bottle cork, 2 screws, and a belt buckle, 6 beads from a child's necklace, 5 building blocks, a darning egg, a bone, a small harmonica, and a partly consumed lollipop, 2 toothpaste lids, and a small red notebook. "I guess this is what you call the rookery," said Mr. Popper, "only he couldn't find any stones to build his nest with." "Well," said Mrs. Popper, "those penguins may have heathen ways at the South Pole, but I declare I think this one is going to be quite a help around the house." "Ork," said Captain Cook, and strutting into the living room, he knocked over the best lamp. "I think, Papa," said Mrs. Popper, "that you had better take Captain Cook outside for a little exercise. Good gracious, but you're all dressed up. Why, you look almost like a penguin yourself." Mr. Popper had smoothed down his hair and shaved off his whiskers. Never again would Mrs. Popper have to reproach him for looking as wild as a lion. He had put on a white shirt with a white tie and white flannel trousers and a pair of bright tan oxblood shoes. He had got out of the cedar chest his old black evening tailcoat that he had been married in, and brushed it carefully and put it on too. He did, indeed, look a little like a penguin. He turned and strutted like one now for Mrs. Popper, but he did not forget his duty to Captain Cook. "Can I have a few yards of clothesline, please, Mamma?" asked Mr. Popper.